My name is Daniel Harper, and I'm 59 years old now, showing more gray in my beard than I care to admit. But there are moments in life that remain sharper than yesterday no matter how much time passes. And this story is one of them. A story from 11 years ago on a bitterly cold Christmas Eve that changed the direction of my life and my son's in ways I never could have predicted. Back when I was 48 and trying to figure out how to be both father and mother to my 10-year-old son, Noah, after my wife, Emily, died suddenly from a cerebral aneurysm that took her from us without warning, one ordinary Tuesday afternoon when she kissed us goodbye and never came home, leaving behind silence, so loud it echoed through every room of our small apartment, and the first years after her death were a blur of exhaustion, guilt, grief, and learning how to function as a broken unit of two instead of a family of three. But by that particular Christmas Eve, Noah and I had found something resembling balance, not happiness exactly, but stability. A way to wake up each day and keep moving. I worked as a civil engineer for the city, a steady job that paid well enough to keep a roof over our heads and allow Noah to grow up without feeling deprived even though something essential was missing, and Christmas Eve had become our special day. The one day each year when we stepped outside routine and reminded ourselves that magic could still exist. The city was wrapped in snow that evening, thick and soft, muting the sound of traffic and turning streetlights into glowing halos. Storefront windows glittered with decorations, bells rang every time doors opened, and the smell of coffee, pine, and sugar hung in the air. Noah wore his oversized green parka, the one Emily had bought him years earlier, and a knit hat pulled low over his ears, his cheeks red with cold and excitement as we walked hand in hand through downtown, stopping for hot cider, browsing last-minute gifts, laughing over silly ornaments, and as we headed back toward the parking garage with our bags swinging from our arms, Noah slowed suddenly and stopped altogether, tightening his grip on my hand and saying quietly, "Dad, look," and I followed his gaze toward the entrance of a closed bookstore where, sitting on flattened cardboard beneath the awning, was a girl no older than 13, thin, pale, bundled in a coat that was far too light for the temperature. Her dark hair tangled and tucked behind her ears, a small crate beside her holding jars of something with handwritten labels and a piece of cardboard that read, "Homemade jam, for dollars," and she wasn't calling out or begging, just sitting there watching people pass as if she had already accepted that most wouldn't stop. And Noah asked the question that would alter everything. Why is she here on Christmas Eve? And I didn't have a good answer. Because no child should be sitting on frozen concrete selling jam while the rest of the world rushed home to warmth and family. And Noah's voice cracked as he said, "She looks cold," and something in me shifted, that instinct you feel when a moment demands more than thought, more than sympathy, and I told him, "Let's go talk to her." And as we approached, the girl looked up cautiously, her shoulders tensing, expecting indifference or annoyance, but I crouched down to her level and said, "Hi, what are you selling?" And she blinked as if surprised anyone had spoken to her at all, then answered softly, "Strawberry and apple jam. My grandmother taught me how to make it." And I asked how much she had left, and when she showed me the jars, I said, "We'll take all of them," which made her freeze, eyes wide, asking if I was serious. And when I handed her money well beyond the total, she tried to give it back, insisting it was too much, but Noah leaned forward and said, "Please keep it." And the girl's composure shattered into quiet tears she tried desperately to hide, and when Noah asked her name, she said, "My name's Clara," and when he asked why she wasn't home, she hesitated, then admitted her mother was sick, unable to work, and that rent was due the next day, and they were already behind, and as she spoke, her words rushed out like she'd been holding them in too long, explaining that they rented a single room, that she'd been missing school to take care of her mom, that she'd started selling jam because it was the only thing she could do, and I felt something deep in my chest ache, recognizing that particular blend of courage and exhaustion, and I asked her where they lived, and after a long pause, she gave the address, and I surprised even myself by saying, "Would you mind if we walked you home? Because once you see a child carrying a burden meant for adults, you can't unsee it." And she led us several blocks to an aging building with flickering lights and narrow hallways, and inside the room was her mother, Sarah, thin and pale, struggling with a severe autoimmune disease that had gone undiagnosed for too long, leaving her unable to stand without pain, and the shame in her eyes when she realized her daughter had been selling jam in the cold was devastating. And I spent that night doing what I could, paying their rent, calling contacts, arranging medical appointments, buying groceries and warm blankets, not because I was some extraordinary person, but because I had once been on the receiving end of kindness when Emily died and strangers showed up with meals, patience, and grace when I had nothing left to give. And kindness, I learned, is not meant to stop with you, it's meant to move through you. And that Christmas Day, Clara and her mother joined us, sitting awkwardly at first, unsure if they belonged, until Noah pulled Clara into cookie-making chaos and laughter filled the kitchen. And over the years that followed, that single act of stopping instead of walking past rippled outward in ways none of us could have predicted. Sarah eventually received proper treatment and disability support. Clara returned to school, excelled academically, and pursued her love of cooking, graduating culinary school and opening a small cafe named Second Chance Kitchen, where she now hires teenagers from struggling backgrounds. Noah grew up witnessing firsthand that empathy isn't passive, it's active, and he chose to study community development, spending his time creating systems that support families before they fall through the cracks. And every Christmas Eve we still meet, now as a chosen family, remembering the night a boy asked a simple question that demanded action, not excuses. And I often think about how close we came to walking past Clara like everyone else did, how easy it would have been to stay warm and uninvolved, and how devastating that choice would have been, because lives don't change from grand speeches or good intentions. They change when someone decides to stop, to notice, to care enough to act. And that's Snowy. Christmas Eve taught me that the most powerful gifts aren't wrapped or planned. They're given in moments when compassion interrupts routine, and that being seen can be the difference between surviving and giving up. And that lesson has guided me every day since, reminding me that humanity isn't found in what we have, but in what we're willing to give when no one is watching.